Hello and welcome to the Naoko Ogigami Retrospective, a series within the series, so to speak, as part of Asian Cinema Season 2. Now, this is going to be somewhat of a Frankenstein together retrospective because I'm filming this now months and months after I filmed the first video, in which I thought was going to be the first one. This is now the first one. This is the introduction and first review of the retrospective. And I also am being joined by my good friend and fellow YouTuber Daisuke Beppu. So at the beginning of this, I wasn't sure how many films he was going to be joining me on talking about in this retrospective, following the entire filmography of Japanese director Naoko Ogigami. And so, yeah, there's going to be a few kinks along the way. I'm going to have to kind of edit the older videos to kind of make it fit. Hopefully there's not too much of an interruption. It can be as smooth as possible and you can just kind of get on to hearing us talk about this woman's movies. But the beginning, the introduction here is me basically setting up why this came about and what you can expect. So, 2 years ago now, in Asian Cinema Season 2017, I watched the film Close Knit, which was a 2017 release directed by Naoko Ogigami. Loved the film, fell in love with it in fact. You can go and watch that first review to get my initial thoughts on it. And then last year, 2018, I rewatched the film with Connie, because I really wanted to show it to her to see what she thought, and to see if I was just in my own kind of echo chamber with this movie, because I loved it so much. She really liked it too. And watching it for a second time, I realized that this is now one of my favorite films of all time. So it was about time that I kind of, kicked myself up the arse and actually went and watched her other films. So I tracked down Ogigami's filmography for the most part. There are some films that she's made that aren't available to English-speaking viewers. Unfortunately, no English subtitles exist for a couple of her films. She doesn't have too many films, but regardless, I couldn't be complete and watch everything, which is handily where Daisuke is going to step in this retrospective, which is awesome. So we are going to cover every single film that she has made, with Daisuke filling in the gaps where I'm simply unable to watch those films. And the cool thing is that once I started going back and watching her other films before Close Knit, which is to date still her most recent movie, I found films that I not only loved, and films that I really got something out of, that moved me, but also films that helped me, that helped distract me, that comforted me, that relaxed me, and really gave me something more than just a film that I enjoyed. And so I was enthusiastically talking to Daisuke, have you seen this woman's films? And he had heard of Ogigami, but he hadn't seen any of her films. So in typical Daisuke fashion, he went out and bought all of her films, the entire back catalogue, from various, I think, used copies and so on in Japan. And he watched all of her films, which is crazy and amazing. It's like the best possible outcome when you want to recommend a film to someone. And I'm just saying you should check out her movies. So he literally checked out all of her movies, which was incredible. So in the end, we worked it out many months, and we do have all of her films accounted for. And I'll be talking about almost all of them. He'll be talking about all of them, which is what this first video is, talking about her first movie from 2000. But before we get to that, I'll hand you over to Tokyo now, to Daisuke, to kind of give you a brief introduction from his perspective.
Greetings from Tokyo. This is Daisuke Beppu, and Luke has very kindly invited me to make a few comments about the films of Naoko Ogigami. Now, I should say that I am not an expert in the films of Naoko Ogigami. In fact, I think it was Luke's enthusiasm that first introduced me to her works. So I should thank Luke for the outset for introducing me to her works by virtue of his enthusiasm, especially for the film Close Knit. So, but I've been very intrigued by her films thanks to Luke's introduction, and I've managed to watch her works. Her filmography is not so large necessarily, so it's not a challenge to go through all of her filmography from my point of view, especially being in Japan, and her works are available generally on DVD or Blu-ray here in Japan very easily. One can obtain them, so I've managed to do that. So if I may, I would just like to provide a few comments on each of the works of Naoko Ogigami. And so I hope you find them interesting, and I hope it might maybe we can have some kind of further discussion on these works, which upon inspection and rewatch are ones that are very rich and filled with life and memorable characters, and quite a keen observer of the world she is, that's for sure. And her view of the world is universal rather than purely Japanese, so to speak. At least that's the way I see her work, which is a really fascinating take, really fascinating. And so with that, my friends, I would very much like to join Luke on this journey through the works of Ogigami, and hopefully I'll try my best to add a little bit to the conversation. So with that, my friends, I hope you enjoy, and let's discuss the works of Naoko Ogigami together.
Okay, so now you've got kind of the gist of it, and I kind of did an introduction for this in the next video, which will be her first feature film, I think, Yoshino's Barbershop. But I'm going to have to kind of edit that around and cut some of that stuff out so you don't hear the same introduction again. But I wanted to kind of make this the introduction because it's going to be the review of her first film from 2000. So without any further ado, let's get right over to that. Back again to Tokyo. We're hopping all over the world here, and to hear Daisuke's thoughts on her very first film. And I just think that this will be a good opportunity to get two different perspectives on her films, perhaps as a Westerner myself, and then someone from that side of the world who understands the Japanese culture, being Japanese himself. Maybe there'll be a little bit of a different insight there into the way the films work. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a universal thing like he was talking about, and there won't be too much of a difference on the way we perceive these films. We have similar tastes, I think, and hopefully it will inspire you to go and check out this woman's filmography, or at least some of her movies, because that's kind of the main goal of this, I think, is to cover everything, to talk about everything, but hopefully inspire people to go and check out her films. But anyway, again, without any further ado, let's get over to Daisuke talking about her first film, and I hope you enjoy, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this series.
So the first film that I'd like to talk about is the film from the year 2000, and it's a very short film. In fact, relatively speaking, it is only 68 minutes, so this is probably best classified as a short film. It's this, which is Hoshino-kun, Yumino-kun. So this is a short film shot on video, and this is directed by Naoko Ogigami. This is a story about two young men or young students whose names are Hoshino-kun and Yumino-kun. The conceit here is that they are from outer space. They are from a different planet, and they are here visiting Earth as part of a school trip. However, they miss the ride back home, and so the two of them are left stranded on Earth. So the film actually starts with the two of them wandering through some wood or wooded area, and they're arguing because they've just missed their passage home, so to speak, and they don't have any money, and they're pretty much stranded, so they have to try to find a way to get back home. Along the way, they come across a young girl who has just gone through a bit of a breakup with her boyfriend. It's implied that it's her boyfriend. And so there's some hijinks that ensue, and the three of them come together, and it becomes a bit of a road trip where the three of them are traveling to the specific destination. And it's the hope that these two extraterrestrials, as it were, can get back home, and they, as I say, get into hijinks. They meet other travelers along the way, and that's the story. So I mentioned that this is a film that's about extraterrestrials, but the film doesn't dwell on that fact very much in terms of special effects. There aren't any space shots or any special effects shots or spaceship shots or anything of that sort. On the contrary, this is a very low budget film that focuses on these two characters, and in particular when they encounter the young girl who is from Earth. And she doesn't necessarily know what their background is or what their story is, but she just thinks that they are just these two guys that are trying to get to a certain destination. So they get together and they bond and they talk, and there's just interactions between these three characters. The two men, or the two young guys here, they don't act particularly alien-like. They are a bit eccentric, but there isn't a point when they seem too, how should I put it, out of place. This is a fish out of water story, however, and so I think that will recall other films that we will encounter later with Ogigami's filmography. There are also shots of the characters, the three lead characters, interacting and talking about stuff that is seemingly just nonsense or seemingly character stuff, but that comes up later and that has certain significance in a very poignant way. There are also elements to this film that are very experimental and quite interesting in terms of technical achievement. There's a particular scene that involves high speed, fast motion, and sped up sound that's done, I think, primarily for comic effect. There's also a scene that involves still photographs or still images, which recalls La Jetée, for example, and that's also done in a very comic way. There are also very interesting elements added on to the soundtrack, into the sounds, and to the things like that that add a certain level of character and comedy, but never overly so, and never in a way that makes fun of the characters. Essentially, we have Ogigami really caring for these characters and letting them breathe and letting them grow within the space of the film, which I think is also very much going to be at play in Ogigami's later films. This is I don't think it's an essential film in terms of her filmography, but it is a really good work, I think, for a short debut film that is over an hour long. It is shot on video, but it doesn't feel like it's an amateurish work. It is very well edited. It has a professional looking sheen to it, and the cuts between the characters, as you get shots of one character and another character as they interact within a certain sequence, I think are edited together in a way that is very well done, and it never reveals any sense of amateurishness. On the contrary, it has a very nice polish for the level and for the budget that this film had. I think it's a very interesting film, and I found myself caring a lot for these three characters, incredibly so. There's some nice comic interplay. Some of the jokes don't land, but most of them do, and I think this is a film that can withstand rewatch and further rewatch. So I understand, however, that this film at the moment isn't available in a version that has English subtitles, unfortunately. So I'm not sure how one can watch this if one needs English language support. However, if you are able to get your hands on this, I would recommend it very much, because it is, as I say, a wonderful glimpse into Ogigami and her concerns at this point of time, and obviously her concerns focus on the characters. And we will get a sense of these concerns as they evolve throughout her career. However, we do see glimpses and maybe certain seeds that might be planted here, or certain strains, lines of thought that will be continued throughout her filmography. Anyway, this has been Hoshino-kun, Yumino-kun, and I hope you, if you are inclined to find it, I hope you enjoy it. Anyway, thank you very much.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans and calling into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause